You and I have an insatiable appetite for electricity. Come with me and we'll look at the issues relative to wind farms and the communities that they serve. This is the Windfarm Guy.
This is where you go when you need to know. 1039 WLPO. Stark Rock News, Talk, and Classic Rock.
911 1039 WLPO News, Weather, and Sports. And you and I have witnessed this together, the adoption of wind turbines in the area. Now, maybe you remember the first one. I do. I kind of remember the first one that I saw around here. It was at Bureau Valley School, the school district. I happen to know somebody that was on the school board at the time, and he said, you know what, we're going to put this wind turbine up. And that's how he described it to me one time. He said, you know what, once it's up and everything's going, it's going to be like augering nickels at me. Mother Nature blowing on it, and it just augurs wealth out. I think that was an interesting way to put it, especially in this day and age, too, where, we've had the conversation often in the last few months, especially about energy, BTUs, where it's coming from. We're aware of where it's coming from, and that's a good thing. We've got here in the studio Dennis Stout, who's the land and project manager with Hickory Wind, also known as the Windfarm Guy on YouTube. Check that out, by the way. I've been on his YouTube channel, and the one thing that I like about him is that he answers. Like if you ask a question underneath the video, he'll go ahead and answer it. He can do the same thing right here. Text the WLPO Jeff Perry Buick GMC text line, 815-223-3093. Dennis, welcome. How'd you get started?
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate that.
Sure.
No, I've been doing wind for about 16 years now, and I live down in Texas, and that's where I started. And since then, I've been really all over the country. I've been Pennsylvania, Indiana, Illinois, Arizona, of course, Texas and Oklahoma. And it is an exploding industry. There's a lot happening, has been for the last 20, 30 years. And it's just growing, and it's really exciting to be a part of something that is cutting edge like this.
Well, it is. You say cutting edge. I'm from the farm. My grandparents had a windmill.
Right.
I mean, they were harvesting the wind a long time ago. Like,
right. Well, wind. It's old. It's an old resource.
Right.
That's how they used to move ships around the ocean.
But we don't have to dig it. We don't have to dig it out of the ground.
Yeah.
Right. I always thought of this. You start digging coal out of the ground, and you have to go get it. It took 10,000 years, or we can harvest 10,000-year-old sunlight and wind, or that's underground, or we can harvest today's sunlight and wind in a lot of ways, too. So, last week, or it was a couple of weeks ago, I had Dr. Loomis here from Illinois State University. We had a nice conversation about that. And we talked about it from the science side, I guess. I'd like to talk to you about this. Since you have a residence in Austin, you live in a boom town, Austin, Texas.
Right.
Texas is a leader in wind energy, too.
Yes, it is.
What goes into making these decisions in terms of, I'm sure, you got big population centers. Where's the energy going that is harvested here from the wind, say in north central Illinois? Because I'm sure in Texas, the energy stays as close to home as possible.
Right. Well, there are multiple things that go into that decision of where to put a wind farm. Really, there's 5 things that are necessary to have a successful wind farm. Obviously, you have to have good wind.
Right.
And you have to have available capacity on a nearby transmission line. And you have to have, of course, willing landowners, because we're not purchasing the ground, we're leasing the ground typically. And but we also need to have favorable permitting and then good sales prices. And where those 5 coalesce, that's where a successful project is, and that's what's happening up here. Farmers have been fighting the wind their whole life, decades, centuries, and now they have an opportunity to make money from that thing that they've been fighting all this time.
We've been putting that shed door back on the tool shed for 40 years.
That's exactly right.
It has been. My kids went to Grand Ridge. It's been a source of wealth. Mm-hmm. It has been a source of wealth for the local tax base. There's no doubt about that. But what goes into deciding, say, the concentration? Okay, you've got a certain number of turbines, and this is something I would know nothing about. It seems like, okay, there's one over here. In a township, what goes into the concentration level and the number of them?
Right. Well, the projects are laid out typically, and especially in some of the older turbines that are smaller. When I say smaller, I mean they generate less energy, 1.5 megawatts or whatever. The ones today are generating 5 megawatts or give or take. And when they're smaller, you can really see it, especially when you're in an airplane. They're in lines, they're in rows, and those rows are generally perpendicular to the dominant wind. And they space those out. Those are called string rows, and they space those out so that they're not negatively interacting with each other. And then there'll be another row, a ways back that's even further away.
Oh, so it is possible for a one wind turbine that's upwind to negatively impact one that's directly downwind?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that.
A wind turbine generates what's called a wake. Just like behind a boat, you can see this wake behind a boat.
Right.
Same thing happens with air and wind. And so behind a wind turbine is this wake, and you need to have the turbines far enough apart that wake doesn't negatively affect it. And to use a meteorological term, you have to let the wind reorganize itself before it hits the next set of turbines.
Had no idea that there was some science behind that, and you don't see that from the road, from the country road. But like you say, you've seen that from an airplane.
Right.
And so that's an interesting way. Okay, so then you have transmission lines, and you run those kilowatts down the line. Act like I know what I'm talking about. But around here in LaSalle County, for example, I was a little kid when the LaSalle nuclear station went in. Mm-hmm. And of course, you have a nuclear station going in, you're going to have some transmission lines. Right. Does that help to have a nuclear capacity like Illinois has in northern Illinois? Does it lend itself to better or easier transmission for wind?
Yes, if there's available capacity on those lines.
Okay.
If the lines are full, it doesn't help at all. But you take this project, Hickory Project, for example, on the line that we're going to be tapping into, there are 80 megawatts of available capacity that we're able to occupy without upgrades. We could put more on the line, but that means we're going to be upgrading either something at substations or transmission lines or whatever, and that adds into money. And so we could do, this is an 80 megawatt project, and to know how many turbines are involved in a project, it's just math. You take the number of megawatts and divide it by the nameplate capacity of the turbine. And so it's 80 megawatts. If we were putting in 1 megawatt turbines, there would be 80 turbines.
So it's like capacity.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so we're looking at putting turbines that generate more electricity, 5 give or take megawatts. And so the number of turbines we're going to be putting in this project is between 10 and 20.
I see. So let me ask you this. This is just kind of pie in the sky stuff. I'm always thinking about the future. And I have a gas electric hybrid, and I'm fascinated by all this. Is there a chance if you were to dream a little bit? What about storage capacity? What about battery storage capacity? Does that? Do you think someday we'll see that attached to some of these wind turbine lines?
Yeah, storage it's a game changer for the renewable industry. And what I mean by that is wind doesn't always blow, and the sun doesn't always shine. And so there are curves with there are times when they're generating a lot of electricity and times that they're not. But then you also have the demand curve, and those demand curves and the supply curves don't necessarily line up. In fact, they don't line up at all unless you're on the Texas coast, and then they're pretty close.
You just get the wind to blow during the day and not at night.
Yeah,
to run the air conditioner.
So what storage does is that allows us to generate the electricity when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining or whatever. In this case, wind is blowing, and then put it on the grid when the demand goes up. And that way, there's no waste or less waste.
That's a good point, too. Interesting. 815-223-3093 on the WLPO Jeff Perry Buick GMC text line. If you have a question for Dennis Stout, he's a land and project manager with Hickory Wind. And the project, as I understand it, is for Hope and Eden Township, which is Tonica and south, maybe Tonica, Cedar Point.
Correct.
And south of there. And so, that's you look in any direction now, you're starting to see some of these wind turbines. And every time I see them, I think of, okay, it's generating some wealth that's close to home. I talked to a fellow the other day. He's one of hundreds of people who are here staying in a hotel for the construction project.
Right.
These guys, I think, are making a pretty nice living, and they're adding to the local economy. Now, after they're gone, they're building it. After it's gone, of course, there's some maintenance and things like that. But what can a local township, a school district expect in terms of economic impact And I guess I'm asking in perpetuity, but maybe it's better to boil it down by the year or something like that. What's the economic impact?
Well, the biggest economic impact from the local economy is obviously during construction. During operation, wind farms will have, a dozen or so employees, either with the company or with the turbine manufacturer, because a lot of times they'll have their employees there on site. And it depends on the size of the project, too.
Sure.
But during construction, oh, my goodness, there might be 200 people.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have them coming in, and they're staying in hotels, eating in restaurants, getting gas, doing all the things that they do.
Right.
And so there's that direct impact. But then because those restaurant owners now have more money, they're buying things. And so there's a lot of secondary impact as well for all the things that these guys and girls consume.
I guess what I'm thinking about and targeting more is the long-term impact on local schools and townships.
Right.
Taxing bodies that rely on property tax.
Every taxing body is going to get their piece of that. In fact, that's what Dr. Loomis was talking about.
It was a couple of years ago. They kind of standardized so that each wind turbine was kind of there was a standardized way that they were taxed. In terms of the footprint?
I'm a Texas boy. I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, we will do. Just like you and everyone else, we will try to pay as few taxes as possible. But the taxes that we do pay, they go to the taxing entities, whether it's the county or the township or schools, any taxing entity. If there happens to be a hospital district or something like that, they too would get their piece of the pie.
I'm sure you get asked this. In fact, I've seen you get asked this on your YouTube videos. And by the way, it's the Windfarm Guy on YouTube. What's the average lifespan of these? I mean, they're out there spinning in the wind. They're in the weather. You have the nacelle, as it's called, and you have the turbine blades and things like that. Occasionally, somebody will bring up the concern about the lifespan and how long they'll last.
Right. The turbine manufacturers will warranty them for however many years, 20, 25 years, something like that.
So it's a few decades.
Whatever that is. And the lease agreements with the landowners are much longer than that. And so it sounds like there's a problem, but not necessarily. You'll notice in this area up around Paw Paw, it just happened, or recently happened, that they repowered one of the projects. And down by Streeter, they also repowered the project. And what that means is they replace components or possibly even the entire turbine.
Okay.
And that is taking advantage of, they have the lease in place, they have the infrastructure in place, and now they're using new technology which will be more productive and be better for the company, the county, and the landowners.
Here's one thing that I've noticed. Now, I'm from the farm. I grew up on a corn farm, and my parents are still farming it in Grundy County. And so I'm kind of tuned in to when a farmer or a landowner starts to say, yeah, I like this or I don't like this. These wind turbines have been around for long enough, I think, that if the landowner and or farmer that was farming in and around them, if they were really unhappy with it, we'd have known it by now.
Right.
They'd have said something about it now. In fact, I follow land values very closely in Iowa, Texas, Illinois, too. And generally speaking, if there's a wind turbine on the farm, it'll add, maybe not a lot, but it'll add some value to the property compared to a comparable property nearby. Have you noticed that?
Well, yes. If there's a turbine on property, that means there's a passive revenue stream, and obviously that's going to impact that property a lot in its value. But an interesting thing happens, and I'm a real estate agent in Texas.
Oh, you are? Okay.
I am, and I do follow it. And a very interesting thing happens, that there have been studies, multiple studies about property values. And what they've found is, even in the view shed area, and what that means is you can see a turbine, but there's not one on your property.
That's a new word for me.
Yeah.
View shed. Okay,
view
so
shed.
You see it on the horizon.
Exactly. Yeah. And so even in the view shed area, property values either stay consistent or even increase. Now, that increase portion of that blows my mind as a real estate agent. Why does that happen? But it's a fact. The studies show that. And I was working on a project in Indiana, and I was getting some pushback because of this property value thing. And so I drove over to Lafayette, because there were some projects that had been built and been there for about 10 years. And so I went and talked to appraisers and agents and brokers and so on. And I told them, I said, don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me the truth.
Evidence.
What happens? tell me about the sales prices. And they all said they hold true or they get better. In fact, one of the agents said, I have to be honest with you, I don't like them, but they improve the property values.
Yeah, I believe that too. Now, because it's been a couple of decades since the first ones really started to show up around here. Right. Which leads me to my next question, and then we're going to have to take a short break for some news and weather and sports. You're welcome to hang around if you can. Okay. The question is this. It seems like, there's a bit of a urgency to do this now, to be early adopters, or maybe this, 2022, I don't know that we could call this early adoption. I mean, these wind turbines have been around a while now. Is there going to come a time when it might be too late to get in on it?
In a certain project, in a specific project.
Geographic area,
yes.
you mean?
Yes. Okay. Once a project is built, if you're in the middle of a project, that ship has sailed. You're pretty much.
And you say no, you're pretty much
right, unless 20 years, 30 years from now it's repowered, and then you might be able to get in on it.
Got it.
But if you're on the fringe, if you're on the edge of a project, or if you're in a different area, even though it may be close, if you're in a different area, there might be an additional phase or an additional project built out there. So
this is a fascinating thing, I think, and it's part of economic development for the county and for Starved Rock Country and for Hope and Eden Township in particular around Tonka, Cedar Point. Do you have any questions? 815-223-3093. We're going to keep Dennis Stout around. He said he would. Stick around and answer a few more questions about the Hickory Wind development proposed for Hope and Eden Township in southern LaSalle County. He's the Windfarm Guy on YouTube. If you want to check him out online, it's 927 1039 WLPO.
Rod Thorson on 1039 WLPO.
Sunny and about high of 57 tomorrow. Hey, Windfarm Guy, what happens when lightning hits one of these things?
Well, they are a giant lightning rod sticking up in the sky.
They kind of are, aren't they?
They get hit by lightning all the time.
Oh, do they?
Oh, yeah.
I figure they had to. I mean, I've not seen one get struck by lightning, but I figure they get struck by lightning and they just kind of keep going on. They keep spinning.
They keep going. It does a little bit of damage to wherever it strikes, usually close to the tip. And
scorches it or something?
Yeah, and it can knock a pock off of it and leave a little hole or a dent, if you want to call it. And after a while, what they'll do is they'll send workers out there to resurface those and repair them.
I figured it just
because the blades. You have to look at it this way. They're an airfoil, just like an airplane.
Yeah.
And when you get all these things on there, if they're dirty or they have holes in them or marks on them, it reduces their efficiency, their productivity. And so after a while, it makes a lot of sense to get out there and repair those. So they're doing the best job they can.
I figured just had to go out there and trip the breaker. And so we'll send you out to trip the breaker.
Oh yeah, please do. Because we know that's going to go well.
Hey, climb up on this tower and trip the breaker.
Yeah, send the news guy to do all the dirty work. I understand.
Stand by after the next news. It's the wind turbine guy, and Tom Henson has sports now.
1039 WLPO Sports.
Woo, I just got the willies thanks to WLPO Special Agent Matt. Go to the WLPO Jeff Perry Buick GMC text line. He's out there working right now on a wind turbine listening to WLPO. He says, here's a wind farm looking down through the trap door on the bottom of the nacelle.
Oh, my God.
All the way down to the crane.
I'm looking at that picture, too. It looks like a kid did it like a drawing. It's like a coloring book.
That's a big crane down there at the ground, and it's a long way away because it's pretty small. So, yeah.
You're talking about putting me in the top of one of those?
Yeah, right. You wear a harness. Or you can shimmy down the chain. I don't care. But, yeah, that's the view from the nacelle at the top of that wind turbine. Thank you, Matt, for listening. Work safely, of course you do.
That's a great picture.
It's a fantastic picture. We're going to keep that and maybe put that over on the Facebook page.
Wow.
941. So I've got him here in the studio. We're standing by for In Memoriam, which is coming up in just a second. It's Dennis Stout, who's the land and project manager with Hickory Wind, that's installing this wind turbine installation in Hope and Eden Township, Cedar Point, Tonka area. And he's a wind farm guy on YouTube. He answers questions there all the time, too. If you have any questions or concerns, you can ask him that. I asked him this offbeat question, which actually off the air sounded kind of fascinating. Now, here we don't have to deal with, everything's got a lifespan. Everything man-made sooner or later wears out, I suppose, So when we're talking about putting up a bigger pedestal may be the wrong word, I don't know, pedestal. how many years? 20, 30? I mean, it's out in the elements, right?
Right.
Any experience on how long those will last?
The towers themselves?
Yeah, the towers themselves.
Well, they're made of steel, and so they'll last longer than the equipment up in the nacelle. Unless there's some sort of...
it's not a moving piece of equipment. It's stationary.
Exactly. It's just sitting there. That's right. As long as it's painted, to keep the elements away from it,
right.
It'll last and last. You had a question a moment ago about why replace the tower when they're repowered, and the short answer there is the new equipment that we're using today is generating more electricity. They generate more megawatts, and therefore they're heavier. And sometimes the old tower may not be substantial enough to support that.
So they replaced the entire tower.
Correct.
Okay. So that's the question John had. What about what happens to the retired wind turbine when it's taken down? I suppose you could talk about the blades or the blades, which are fiberglass, right?
Right. Carbon fiber.
How heavy are those? I mean, I see them on a semi, and they look pretty big. I suppose they look heavy. I mean, they got to be heavy duty to deal with the elements. But how heavy is one of those wind turbine blades? It looks like it's 70, 80 feet long.
No, they can be 50 yards long.
150 feet long. Yeah.
So, or longer.
They weigh a few tons, even though they're fiberglass.
Right. And I don't know the answer to that. I will say this: I have a picture. Several years ago, I saw the nacelle of a 2.3 megawatt turbine being delivered.
The nacelle. Now that looks like the size of a school bus to me.
Exactly. And they are so heavy. That truck, with all its cantilevered things on the ends, had 72 tires on the ground.
Really? That's heavy.
That's pretty stinking heavy.
A lot of copper in that thing.
Yeah.
So on the wind blade itself, fiberglass, recyclable?
Most of it is, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the part that gives it a problem is the blades. Now, I visited with a professor at Washington State University, and he's developed a way to mechanically recycle the blades.
Really?
And he said there are 3 ways to recycle blades. You can either recycle it by fire, by chemical, or by mechanical means.
Sure.
And the only way that makes financial sense is mechanical, and you need to have volume for it to really make financial sense. But they can be recycled, even the old ones.
Really?
But I will say this is really good news. A couple of the turbine manufacturers, Vestas and I believe GE, have announced that their new blades, they're calling them fully recyclable, and what that really means is they're economically recyclable.
Yeah.
And so that's really good news. That's really good news, because when you take, let's say you repower a project, you have 100 turbines. That's 300 blades, and if they go to a landfill, boy, that's going to overrun that
we don't
landfill.
Want that.
No, and so being able to solve that problem is huge for the industry.
It really is. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you can tell, Dennis Stout is a straight shooter on this. If you have any questions, you can text them to us at WLPO 223-3093, or if you go to his YouTube channel, the Windfarm Guy, you'll notice that he interacts with viewers of his videos too, and he'll answer questions, concerns, challenges that you may have too. So he's representing Hickory Wind Farm, which is working in Hope and Eden Township near Tonica, Cedar Point, and helping making us more energy efficient and sustainable here in Starved Rock Country. It's
online, on air, on your smartphone, and on your smart speaker. 1039 WLPO.
It's 9:49. It's been nice to have the Windfarm Guy here in the studio, Dennis Stout. Thank you for your questions and your comments on hearing him today. Good to have you in the community. We're going to have to talk sometime in the future about Austin. I haven't been to Austin, Texas. I hear it's amazing.
You need to come down.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing place in America.
Oh,
one of them.
It's exploding.
It really is.
It's
That's
exploding.
good. Okay, well, we're glad you're here, though.
The Tesla Gigaplant's grand opening is Thursday.
I got a friend that's going.
All right, do you?
To the Tesla Gigaplant. Yeah, those things are incredible. Well, electricity, it kind of keeps everything running. Mm-hmm. So thanks for being part of this community, to the entire project, whether it's you here or it's the Windfarm Guy or the Hickory Wind Project, too. Others are doing a great job. I mean, I like how all you guys kind of work together. I see people all the time that are staying here working on these wind turbines and projects. And I've also heard around about that you guys have made yourselves a part of the community around Tonica,
right,
and other places around there too.
We have, and we want when you're when you're in an area, this is a long-term relationship. We're going to be here for decades. And so we want that relationship to be good, and we want to get off on the right foot. And so we have been reaching out to some of the communities. We've made contributions to the Tonka Volunteer Fire Department and to the Cedar Point Volunteer Fire Department. And not just contributions, but the really cool thing is Cedar Point needed new radios. The radios were old and shot, and so we bought them new radios.
Nice.
And Tonka, they have, we bought them imaging, video, heat imaging.
Oh, thermal imaging, yeah.
Yes, thermal imaging.
So you're looking for lost people.
Looking through walls and stuff. They're going to invite me back when they get those in, because I want to see how they work. That sounds really cool. But we're very happy to be able to provide
life-saving stuff.
Absolutely.
It really
Absolutely.
is. Yeah, they'll get called out every once in a while, mutual aid to the state park or something like that. They're looking for somebody that's lost,
right,
at night or something. So that's a real nice addition.
And that tool will help. That they said they could look out into wooded area and see what sort of signature of a body out in there walking around or whatever.
That's really nice. Yeah. And here's the thing. It's a little unconventional. If this were any other multi-million-dollar business with that looked like a rectangle or a box, a manufacturer that was multi-million dollars, it would be one of those things where it doesn't raise any questions at all. But these are wind turbines, and even though they're not new to me or you, and they are to some people. So we understand your questions. If you have any other questions, I've got Dennis Stout's contact information right here in the studio. I'll keep it here, and I can send you in his direction. I asked you off the air if you'd been to some of our local places when you were here. You said you took your wife to Starved Rock.
Yes.
Isn't that an amazing place?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks for helping me segue into this message about Starved Rock Lodge. Where'd you stay? In a cabin or in the hotel itself?
We stayed in the hotel.
And you
itself.
Hiked a little bit?
The old part of the hotel, which was really neat. I mean, it was really cool.
In the wintertime, maybe with the fireplaces going?
No, it was not winter. It was summertime.
Well, let me tell you something. When you come out here in the summertime, you got to be on the veranda. On the south side, they're overlooking the Illinois River. They have bands, Friday night music, and they have some amazing things going on the veranda out on the north side as you're looking over the Illinois River Valley. It's beautiful.
Okay.
It really is. So let me know when you're back in town. We'll do that, okay?
All right, good. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll have a good time out on the veranda. And you will, too, at Starved Rock Lodge and Conference Center. You know what they're looking for right now is help. Food and beverage, banquet set up.
Thank you for watching. Working together, we can make good energy decisions and save our planet. I am the Windfarm Guy.